Hello. Just thought we'd go over some things over here, the cognitive abilities involved in songwriting. So basically I have already downloaded some stuff on this, so I just thought I'd talk to you about it. And then we're going to wrap everything up with a bullboard thing I got. So this is it. It's a kind of a big report. So this is called The Cognitive Architecture of Songwriting, an Expert Analysis of Integrated Abilities. Introduction. Framing songwriting as an integrated cognition. A. The cognitive complexity of music creation. Songwriting represents an extraordinary complex human behavior demanding the simultaneous execution of multiple high-level cognitive processes. The inherent complexity of music, often described as an ordered arrangement of sounds, requires an intricate understanding and considerable effort to master the constituent musical elements, such as harmony and bass line. I look at that a lot in my curriculum, which I've already updated. And I'll let you know about that as soon as I've finished updating it. Research has established that engaging with music, encompassing both perception and creation, is among the most cognitively demanding tasks a human can undergo, utilizing a myriad of brain resources. Cognitive crescendo, how music shapes the brain structure and function. The mastery of songwriting extends far beyond simple expressive capacity. It necessitates the coordination of neurological and physiological or psychological functions typically associated with language, mathematics, spatial reasoning, and emotional regulation. The foundational requirement underscores why music perception and cognition have been a focal point for modern neuroimaging and psychological research, providing avenues for understanding underlying neurological mechanisms and their implications in emotional and cognitive activities. The whole brainwave imperative, balancing generative and analytical modes. The songwriting process is optimally described as a whole brain process requiring dynamic engagement with distinct modes of cognition traditionally associated with the left and right cerebral hemispheres. Success hinges on the ability to access and utilize these modes synergistically. The generative or divergent cognition mode is often correlated with functions of the right brain. This mode is critical during the initial phases of creation, focusing on inspiration, gathering disparate ideals, making novel connections, and allowing subconscious processes to surface creative imagery or deeper thematic meaning. For individuals dominant in this mode, it is relatively an easy, generative, heartfelt expression, abundant lists of images, or initial spontaneous ideas. Conversely, the analytical or convergent cognition mode is associated with left brain functions. This mode imposes structure and pattern upon the raw, divergent material. It is engaged with the writer in putting ideas into a cohesive structure, making technical decisions regarding rhyme scheme and meter. That's lyrical rhythms. We're going to cover that too. Cutting unnecessary lines, switching verses, rewriting melodies, checking for consistency, and refining the work through careful excision. C, the critical role of cognitive fluidity. While many songwriters may exhibit a natural dominance in either the generative inspiration or the analytical structure phase, the completion of viable composition requires comprehensive engagement with both. That's the left and right sides of the brain. The necessity of transitioning between these distinctive cognitive states, mandates high proficiency in cognitive fluidity. The capacity refers to the rapid and efficient shift between the divergent ideation, exploration, and inspiration in convergent structural analysis, editing, and pattern application. A high degree of cognitive fluidity allows the composer to embrace the duality of songwriting, inspiration, and imagination within a structure and a pattern. Conversely, difficulties in executing this cognitive shift, resulting in cognitive rigidity or an over-reliance on conflicting compositional assumptions, can interfere significantly with the creative process, often manifesting as complex cognitive tasks becoming inaccessible or going offline under stress, a common psychological barrier in writer's block. Therefore, advanced songwriting ability is intrinsically linked to the regulatory capacity to integrate these dual cognitive demands smoothly and iteratively. Part 2, executive functions, the cognitive manager of composition. Executive functions, EF, constitutes, in parentheses, EF, constitutes supervisory cognitive system essential for complex, non-routine tasks. These processes are defined by their involvement in planning, problem-solving, decision-making, and self-regulation. In songwriting, EF, which is executive functions, serves as an overarching management system that guides the entire workflow from conceptualization to final revision. B, planning, goal setting, and cognitive control. The initial stages of composition require robust planning and goal-setting abilities. Songwriter must consciously structure the piece, delineating verses, choruses, and bridges. This process relies on cognitive control, which enables the composer to manage the constant stream of inner dialogue and filter out psychological interference, such as referring to the monkey mind. When the brain is under stress or anxiety, the parts responsible for complex cognitive tasks, including the complex planning and connection making necessary for great art, may fully become suppressed, highlighting the necessity of effective self-regulation. Effective cognitive control is therefore vital for establishing a clear compositional assumptions, processes, strategies, and criteria, which, if faulty or conflicting, can severely impede creative output. C, cognitive flexibility and revision. A crucial component of executive function is music and cognitive flexibility, encompassing the capacity of redirection of attention and task switching. Songwriting requires simultaneous attention management across domains, shifting rapidly between analyzing rhythm patterns, musical, checking semantic consistency, linguistic in parentheses, and evaluating structural adherence, which in parentheses is formal. The iterative nature of songwriting, moving into the initial ideation of the final polish, heavily relies on executive function. The revision stage is not merely correction, it is a critical process of simultaneously constraint management, ensuring that every aspects work in harmony. Expert composers approach revision as the primary goal, focusing on refining an initial idea over time rather than attempting to achieve perfection in an initial pass. Furthermore, formalized music training demonstrably impacts cognitive flexibility. Let me read that again. Furthermore, formalized music training demonstrably impacts cognitive flexibility. The concept of cognitive transfer applies to here. The near transfer occurs when learned musical skills, reading notation, are applied to a new instrument, while far transfer involves applying the discipline and problem-solving skills learned in music composition, self-regulation, or leadership, in parentheses. That is, self-regulation, leadership in parentheses. So in music composition, to domains completely unrelated to music, copywriting, right? Marketing yourself during the gigs, like making videos of these gigs that you're doing. The relationship between executive function and songwriting is not unidirectional. While complex tasks necessitate high executive function capacity, engagement in structured musical activities actively develops and enhances these regulatory systems. Research supports that musical training beyond mere exposure yields beneficial effects in core executive function performance in children, particularly bolstering inhibitory control, cognitive flexibility, and working memory. Moreover, structured songwriting activities, such as those used in music therapy programs, have been documented to improve cognitive functions, including in older adults diagnosed with dementia. This evidence suggests that songwriting is not merely a product of existing cognitive capacity, but it also serves as a potent vehicle for developing and maintaining the complex regulatory systems of the mind across the lifespan. By the way, my mom died of dementia, turned into Alzheimer's. Memory systems, encoding, retrieval, and structural storage. Working memory, capacity and resource allocation, A. This is part A. Working memory is indispensable in composition, serving as a mental workspace where information is maintained and manipulated for short periods of time. Songwriting places immense simultaneously demands on working memory, requiring the parallel processing of verbal and tonal information. Neuropsychological evidence supports the existence of specialized short-term memory system used in verbal information. This domain specifically implies careful allocation of resources between the phonological loop for lyrics and verbal planning, in parentheses, for lyrics and verbal planning, unparentheses, and specialized tonal buffers. Longitudinal studies demonstrate a positive capacitive association between music practice and working memory capacity, affecting both the verbal and visuospatial working memory. Critically, the measurable change in working memory capacity is proportional to the weekly hours dedicated to musical practice. So that's really important, right? The more practice you get, the more working memory you get. This underscores the ability to handle the current cognitive load of composition is a practiced developmental skill, not a static cognitive endowment. Right? You're not born with it, you got to work at it. Long-term memory and structural chunking. For complex compositions, especially those exceeding short musical phrases, long-term memory and retrieval strategies become vital. A fundamental strategy employed by skilled musicians is chunking. So this is a fundamental strategy which involves grouping individual and complex items like chords, scales, arpeggios, or long rhythmic patterns into single coherent units based on prior knowledge and familiarity. So chunking is particularly essential for managing rhythmic complexity, enabling composers and listeners to process long rhythmic cycles that extend beyond the known limits of the psychological present, typically 2 to 3 seconds. Let me read that again. Chunking is particularly essential for managing rhythmic complexity, enabling composers and listeners to process long rhythmic cycles that extend beyond the known limits of the psychological present, which is typically 2 to 3 seconds. So they process 2 to 3 seconds past the present and the lyrical capacity of working memory. So it goes beyond the 2 to 3 second range, is basically what it's saying. By organizing these elements into larger, meaningful chunks, the composer drastically reduces the load on working memory. Expert musicians develop sophisticated hierarchical retrieval structures within the LTM, long-term memory. LTM is long-term memory. When novices may struggle with sequential recall, if one link in a music chain breaks, they must return to the beginning. Experts can access smaller embedded units of music directly from long-term memory, providing flexibility and efficiency in both performance and revision. The sophisticated organization transforms the way the composer manages musical grammar and frees cognitive resources for higher level aesthetic decision making. Interesting, the hierarchical retrieval structures within long-term memory. Autobiographical memory and emotional retrieval. Lyric composition is frequently driven by emotional content and narrative derived from personal experience. Music involves as a potential key for retrieving music-evoked autobiographical memories. Memes. Music-evoked autobiographical memories. It says memes, which is in parentheses, which is an acronym for music. Music-evoked autobiographical memories. Music-evoked autobiographical memories, which are characterized by vividness and self-relevance. These retrieved memories provide a rich emotional and contextual foundation required for constructing lyrics that express deep feelings. Also, I'm going to structure my new curriculum on emotions. How do you feel? What are the emotions you as a performer want to portray to the audience, right? Because it's a spatial relationship between the performer and the audience. So just think of the audience as your best friend. What story would you tell him musically that might be of meaningful interest? For instance, songs characterized by low energeticness and high acousticness are associated with the retrieval of memories characterized by emotions like sadness, calmness, adoration, enhanced phenomenological I can't pronounce that. Qualities, vividness, uniqueness, and importance. So let me read that again. So, for instance, songs characterized by low energeticness and high acousticness are associated with the retrieval of memories characterized by emotions like sadness, calmness, adoration, and vividness, uniqueness, and importance. Conversely, high energetic, low acoustic songs correlate with memories high in excitement and amusement. This predictive capacity allows the songwriter to initially manipulate musical elements, key selection, tempo, to guide the emotional responses and retrieval in both the creator and the listener. It's almost like I wrote this. So this is all from Gemini AI. And let's see. There's a lot to this, you guys. Grouping structure with the hierarchical structural organization, metric structure. So grouping structure, the segmentation of the musical surface with identifiable motifs and phrases. Little licks, right? So, I could go on, but I think I better make another part for this, okay?